Representative. Scotland County, Northeast Missouri, 1407, that's 22,512 per year. Mississippi County, 1445, roughly the same, $23,120 a year. That's what the prevailing wage would be set in those counties. Versus where we are now, and again, if we want to talk just on the check, we're looking at $32,000, Berry County, $20,000, St. Clair. St. Clair County, actually, the current system, to prove that it works, the current state's prevailed rate for St. Clair County is $12.75 an hour. And when those wages were submitted, presumably, I can guarantee you they weren't from any wages that we had and were able to submit. There were no fringe benefits at all. Yep, I can show you right here. Yep. Nope, that's state, it's for the laborers, general labor. See if I were where I was. That's what I stated. That's correct.
Representative Will.
Yeah. My numbers are good. Trust me. Scotland County, 33,000. Mississippi County, 33. St. Clair, 20,400. That's under our current system on the check. Plus, in most instances, there are some fringe benefits, which at the high water mark for any of those counties would get an individual up to. That would be Scotland County with $12 in benefits on top of $21 an hour. He'd make $53,000 a year before taxes. So we go from 53, it's total package, not what he sees on the check. It provides that man, presumably, with some health insurance, dental and vision coverage, okay? What he sees on the check, though, what he brings home to feed his family is $33,000. This would then bring that down to 22. I just wanted to make sure that if we're a body that values benefits, that values health insurance instead of Medicaid, that values pension for retirement to supplement, our Social Security system, whatever it is, I think that's fundamentally the question that we have when we look at some of these bills that's been before this committee. Is A, what types of jobs do we want? What types? Do we want jobs that provide benefits or have the means? But keep in mind, a lot of people think this is it. I think I'm getting my cut here. The non-union construction worker who, say the contractor, it's an open shop, bids and wins, they get that total package on the check. Whereas my man gets that, and that money goes into his benefit program, because that's what he's decided he wants that money to go to. But a non-union guy actually gets all that on the check. That's the guy that's really going to feel a massive impact. I mean, we will hurt, don't get me wrong. But your open shop construction worker, who probably dominates a lot of rural areas, he's the one that's going to feel it more than anybody. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the indulgence. If anyone has any questions, I'm available.
Thank you, sir. Are there others here to testify in opposition to this bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Nancy Giddens, Construction Employers Coalition, and the Carpenters District Council, dittoing Mr. McBride's comments.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there others to testify in support of the bill? You'll get your chance.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Michael Grove appearing on behalf of the Missouri School Boards Association. We just see this as an opportunity for us to potentially reduce costs on some of those construction projects that we do have. Since all construction costs for schools in the state of Missouri, as opposed to some other states, are borne locally. There's no state funds that go into those construction costs. So, it's support this legislation.
Thank you, sir. Are there others to testify against the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Representatives, I'm David Claridge today, appearing on behalf of the Mechanical Contractors Associations of Kansas City and St. Louis. Normally, I would just go on record in speaking in opposition to this legislation, as I think the witnesses in opposition thus far have certainly enumerated many of the reasons why you should seriously consider whether or not this policy change is meritorious. I would like to juxtapose these two bills that you've just heard, though, 285 and 195, very briefly. And that is, you were told just a few moments ago by Representative White that where there's prevailing wage, there's higher costs, higher government accountability for those costs with poorer construction. You were told just a moment ago on 195 that where there's no prevailing wage, that there's lower cost, no government accountability, but good construction. Representative Fraker, let me just suggest that the reason why Hooterville should be concerned about why St. Louis and Kansas City are here is that in many cases, the nature of the business that might be required in Hooterville might require us. And that means that we have to be able to go and provide a quality workforce for a high-tech service. If Hooterville decides to put in a nuclear power plant, they might want us. And so I would just suggest that prevailing wage has its purpose. And since the time of the Empire State Building, as Senator Green noted, there have been reasons why prevailing wage was put in place in order to protect the educated workforce and its ability to be provided on a local level. Not always, although you might prefer local employees to provide local labor, you may not be able to acquire that local labor locally. You might have to go elsewhere. And thus, many of the people that I represent, the companies and individuals, travel not only within the St. Louis region or the Kansas City region, but throughout the state and in some cases throughout this nation because of the level of quality of workforce that they provide. So, Mr. Chairman and representatives, I would strongly encourage your objection to this legislation, and I would be more than happy to address Zsa and Douglas's concerns.
Thank you, but that won't be necessary.
Thank you.
How about that clarifying for informational purposes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Hunter Keppel. I'm from Columbia, Missouri. I represent no special interest. I'd like to think of myself as representing the taxpayer, which I'm one, for just the benefit of those of you. My wife and I did build a house in Columbia, and I have worked blue-collar jobs in the past. I believe I am here in order to support the point of view that prevailing wage legislation should be abolished. And I would like to do that from a common sense point of view, without the distractions of immigrant labor or other things that are government accountability, which are beside the point. Now, the first thing that I noticed thinking about prevailing wage is what is meant by wage. We're talking about an hourly rate, are we not? Yet, we have heard up to this point that it's very simple to take this hourly rate, multiply it by 2,000 hours a year, and come up with an annual income. Well, I submit that there is a big difference between an hourly rate and annual income, particularly in an industry like the construction industry, where there is widespread unemployment. Now, we've heard testimony that I think is incontrovertible, that prevailing wage legislation increased costs to government entities. Excuse me. And it seems to me that where costs are increased, there will be certain consequences. If you increase the cost of labor artificially by fiat, by government legislation and regulation, are you not expecting to see lower employment or fewer hours of employment in the course of a year's time? Or let's put it more concretely. When I was installing burglar alarms, would I rather have a $20 an hour job 3/4 of the year or an $18 an hour job full-time? Families do not live on hourly wages. They live on annual income. And that's what we're talking about, income. As has been expressed before, prevailing wage is essentially a tax on government passed on to the taxpayers. What is received in return is less, smaller school buildings, smaller senior citizen centers. Now, I'm prepared to talk about the University of Kansas City study recent study supporting the benefits of prevailing wage legislation. And we can do that, we can get into some weeds about that. But I just ask you to think about it. A prevailing wage has so many benefits. Wouldn't we all want to extend it to other areas? In other words, if there are any principles involved here, they should apply to every industry, right? So, prevailing wage goes back to 1891. It's the first in a long series of labor laws that have become enmeshed and impossible, almost impossible to separate out in any academic study or any session such as the one we have here. In 1891, local feelings were very strong, us versus them. The company in Long Island did not cotton to bringing in workers from Alabama, black ones, exaggerated that threat and came up with the idea of prevailing wage that became the Davis-Bacon law. I would just mention that at those times, there was no minimum wage, there was no social safety net. After prevailing wage, we have minimum wage, talks about living wage. I would stress again that there is no living wage. There's a living income, there's not a living wage, because a lot of wages are come from part-time people, like school teachers working in the summer in the construction industry. So what am I getting at? We have a lot of labor legislation that has not really produced prosperity. We have seen in the last 6 years government attempts to manipulate the labor market. It failed. Let me conclude with, if there are any questions about the University of Kansas City study, and the effects of that study, I'll be glad to talk about them in questions. Well, let me conclude by saying this, that what we see with labor legislation and other kinds of legislation, similar legislation, is that government seems to think that it is its purpose to correspond to cater to every special interest. And if you just get all of the special interests taken care of, why, you'll serve the general interest. That's fallacious. Not all the special interests can be catered to or taken care of, and they're not taken care of equally. I believe certain people who testified here would say that the construction industry is somehow different, somehow more deserving of special care. I dispute that. Some people have talked about what's fair. Fair is subjective, it varies. We have different opinions. However many people we have here, we have probably that many plus one or two different ideas of what's fair. Is it the government's business to impose its idea, the idea of a majority of legislators, of what's fair on the rest of people, interfering with their individual decisions, how they take care of their family income, whether it's full-time or part-time income? So I would submit that serving a special interest damages the general interest. I'd be glad to respond to any questions.
Thank you very much, sir. With that, we conclude House Bill 195. I'm sorry, were you on the list to testify for, against, or in opposition?
Against.
Okay, make it very brief. I have another bill, sir.
My name is Rich Lex. I'm from Florissant, Missouri. I'm also a member of the Painters Union. I've lived in the state of Missouri for, well, I'd say 46 years, but I spent 7 years in the United States Army. Opponents of the prevailing wage statute argue that the repeal of the prevailing wage statute would save dollars on construction costs and would bolster state, local, and county revenue streams. Opponents of prevailing wage statute argue that prevailing wage laws increase the cost of public construction due to the impact of higher wage rates on total construction costs. Opponents of prevailing wage statute argue that by exempting school construction from the prevailing wage statute, 4 schools could be built for the price of 3 schools. Some opponents of the prevailing wage statute argue that prevailing wage statute decreases minority participation and female participation in and on-job training and apprenticeship programs in the construction trades. In my opinion, labor costs are not the dominant cost in government construction contracts. Even including benefit and payroll taxes, labor costs are roughly 20 to 30% of the construction contracts. If labor costs are 25% of the total cost and prevailing wage rules raise wages by 10%, the impact of the contract cost would be no more than 2.5%. Thus, even if there's an increase in contract cost, it is likely to be too small to point or being undetectable in some instances. In my opinion, in any introduction or advancement of legislation to address this issue will be unsuccessful and detriment to our state by dealing with the 20 to 30% cost and not realizing what needs to be addressed in the 70 to 80% of the cost. Many opponents will tell us that labor cost is a problem, but let us be reminded the local economy, the state economy benefit from public works dollars through increases in sales tax and corporate tax revenue, and ensuring the construction of Missouri remains a highly trained occupation capable of producing quality construction. Taking wages out of the equation forces contractors to compete on a basis of efficiency. There's a ton of research that shows repealing prevailing wage leads to lower quality construction, increased costs, overruns, and unscrupulous contractors. We must keep contractors competing on efficiency and not beating each other out of the contracts by beating the workforce out of its wages and or the state out of its tax revenue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to remind everyone that they need to complete a witness form for the testimonies. At this point in time, that concludes House Bill 195. We'll now hear House Bill 257. Representative Duggar, go ahead when you're ready, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Tony Duggar. I represent the 141st District, which is Wright County and the eastern half of Webster County. Thank you very much for hearing my House Bill 257 today. The provisions in 257 would include school districts in counties without a charter form of government. They can vote to exempt themselves from prevailing wage requirements. The provisions do not apply to school districts in the counties of Jackson, St. Charles, St. Louis, and Jefferson. These exemptions apply to constructions and maintenance work done for the school district. Upon the vote of the school district, they must notify the Division of Labor Standards of their action that they've taken. The rationale behind this bill would be that it would allow school districts the ability to make infrastructure improvements without worrying about the high cost of prevailing wage. It would be, the most impact would be in the rural areas where labor costs are lower. The bill doesn't require the schools to change their policy, and it leaves it up to a local control by a majority of the vote of the local school board. So it's a small bill. That's what it does in a nutshell. I would be glad to answer any questions.
Questions of the bill sponsor? Representative Weber.
Been a while, Mr. Chairman. You said that this bill will predominantly affect rural areas. And this has been a theme that has been going on for the last couple hours about urban wages versus rural wages. In 2013, the Republican majority passed a bill that revamped the way prevailing wage is calculated. And when they did, they said this bill will more accurately reflect wages in rural areas. Do you believe that bill that the Republican majority passed is working, or do you think it's not working?
Well, I mean, it's helping some, yes, but this bill will help even more.
But if it's helping some, if it's accurately reflecting the rural wages, then your bill won't make any more difference, more or less difference depending on where it is.
I don't know about that. I think this bill will make a bigger impact
Why?
because I think it specifically sets out what it will do for schools. And it will, in return, put more money in the classrooms.
But why will it make a bigger difference in rural areas?
Because the wages in rural areas are not as high as they are.
Right, which is why you passed the bill in 2013 to fix that. And if your bill worked, then it shouldn't be an issue.
I said it worked somewhat. I said this bill, I think, will even work better.
Okay. I guess my last, this bill, you said only applies to schools, and it only does apply to schools, but it's not the first bill that we've heard today. Right? We heard a bill that just applied to low-income housing tax rates. We heard a bill that applied just to several counties in the way it was calculated, and also to changing the definition of major construction and repairs. And we've got a bill that just applies to schools. So you see how we look at this in the aggregate. Through all the bills today, you're basically trying to totally revamp prevailing wage.
Gentlemen, I'm only speaking on behalf of my bill today. So I haven't heard the other two, so I don't know. I'm just presenting my bill today.
Right, and that's the strategy that you guys always employ. You always have one person do one little piece, and that person is just doing a little piece, and they're not doing anything else, but the sum is that you're totally revamping prevailing wage.
Is that a question or a statement?
I think it's probably more of a statement, but do you understand my frustration on that?
Do you understand the frustration in the rural areas where we're having to deal with this issue?
Why are you, and this is where I was going to let it go, but you went back, what do you mean, deal with what issue?
The wages in the rural areas are not as high as they are in the other areas, and so we're stuck
Everybody
with
agrees with
paying-
that.
We're stuck
Yes.
with paying the prevailing wage that relates to the higher areas.
Which you passed a fix for that. You voted for a fix for that in 2013, and then you're coming back and saying that it's not working, that the bill you passed is not working?
I'm saying, gentlemen, that this bill will help.
Would you say that
If you were for the last bill, this bill's even better.
I wasn't for the last bill.
Okay, then you probably won't be for this one.
Okay, gentlemen, I want you to understand, and I don't know, I mean, I know that you're not going to acknowledge this, but I want everybody in the committee to understand, the entire day we've been talking about urban and rural wages. This Republican majority has passed a prevailing wage bill 2 sessions ago to address that issue. So you have to admit, either that bill that you passed is a failure, or this is not a problem. You can't have it both ways. That bill can't work, and this still be a problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Dorman?
Thank you. To inquire, Mr. Chairman? Thank you, Representative. Bottom line, to make this simple, this bill would allow the rural school districts to get more for their dollar?
That would be correct. It would allow them to have more dollars to spend in the classroom.
So,
Kids.
I don't think you were here. We had a comment earlier that some cities are tired of subsidizing the rural area. So this would help alleviate that problem, it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would this stop the bidding process in any way of a school? I mean, when schools, put together, their addition or whatever they want with that school, anyone could bid on this, correct?
That's correct.
I mean, the scope
Not
of
doing
work,
anything
the
with bidding.
quality of the work they want, the materials that they have lined out that they want, to the minute detail would still be in effect for this job. And these jobs would still go under inspection all along the way to ensure proper installation and quality control, correct?
I believe that's correct, Jim.
So anyone can bid on any type of job that falls within the scope of this bill, correct? It would just make it to where anybody is eligible to win the bid. Am I correct? They wouldn't have to curtail in more wage money. This would be a savings And that contractor puts together that bid, correct? I mean, he's not being forced, right? Right. So this is a free market bill. I don't get the argument. I really don't. You know, I'm a contractor. I have to bid on these jobs, and I have to put in what I think it's going to take, and to the scope of work directed by an architect and by the contractor that's putting forth the job. That's what I just don't get about this argument. So I appreciate the bill, and I hopefully we can, you know, move this even further. So thank you.
Representative Smith?
To inquire.
Go ahead.
So this is a cost issue. How many, do you know how many school districts there are that would be affected by this? Because it's just carving out St. Louis County, Jackson.
St. Charles and Jefferson.
Oh, what about St. Louis City? Are they get caught up in the mix?
I believe they're carved out as well.
So this is impacting a whole lot of school districts. So from here, Callaway County, Cole County, some districts with Boone County. Oh, nice population there. So I looked at a statistic one time, and it was talking about school districts in Missouri, and there's like hundreds of them. There's like 400, maybe 500 school districts. What about consolidation of some of those districts to bring down costs, and then you wouldn't have to cut into the pay of the people in the community that are working on it? You think that'd be a good fix to?
So I don't know.
I mean, we were talking about costs, and I'm just trying to see, maybe that'd be easier, or if we, I know in a lot of those districts, the highest paid person is that superintendent. There's a lot of superintendents making a lot of money. So if we somehow limited the amount of money that they made, maybe that could save with the maintenance costs. Would you be agreeable to that?
Gentlemen, again, this is a local control issue, and I would leave all of that up to the local board.
Okay, because I don't see how the prevailing wage issue helps again. We seem to be coming after the man and woman that are working, just trying to make a living, and we want to cut into their pay, but not doing anything with limiting how much a contractor can make off this contract as far as profit, or anything with consolidation of the school districts, because I think 400 or 500 is a whole lot, or limiting the superintendent pay. Now going back to the prevailing wage, it's the county, so in the county, if they turn in the sheets, that's what sets the wage rate? Is that how it works?
I believe that's correct.
So are they not turning in the, I mean, if that's the prevailing wage, are you saying that's too high even for the county? So if everybody in Mississippi County turns in their sheet for all their wage classifications, is
But are they turning them in?
maybe that's the issue. You know, I don't know if this will fix that. Maybe there's something, I learned a new word, like nefarious. Maybe there's something nefarious happening with these contractors. That's
Big word, gentlemen.
yeah, it's a big word, but I'm just trying to understand.
I don't quite follow your line of question.
I'm just trying to understand
Bill, please.
why are we coming after the working men and women, and we're not looking at anything else with these rural districts as far as consolidation or limiting pay of people that are making a whole lot of money? And why aren't these contractors turning in these sheets? So that all applies to the bill. Do you have any insight on any of that?
Gentlemen, I don't.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Fricker. Go ahead.
Inquire, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Gentlemen, you and I share a county. We're neighbors.
That's correct.
And you have about 3,500 Amish in your district,
That's correct also.
which is about 10% of your constituent base
Yes.
is Amish. Now, these Amish pay taxes, don't they? They pay property taxes.
Yes, they do.
And 84%, I think, in our county of the property tax goes to the schools, correct?
That's correct.
However, they don't attend our schools, do they?
They do not.
So those Amish are in our district, they're buying groceries at our grocery stores, they're shopping in our towns, they're providing their taxes, paying taxes just like we do. They don't use our schools. However, we can't hire them and use them in our school districts to help if we need something done, can we? So with this bill, would this bill allow us to hire an Amish to come and paint a schoolroom for us if we wanted them to?
Sure,
Fantastic.
definitely would.
You know, there's some good craftsmen out there that do a lot of good work. And they deserve that opportunity. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jim Fall, would you like to testify? Or quick questions? Very quick.
Thank you, Representative, for being here, and I know that you've spent a lot of time in government service, city clerk, that kind of thing, so you were involved in some kind of bidding processes, I would assume?
County clerk, gentlemen.
County clerk, I'm sorry. Okay. Have you ever served on a board of education?
I have not.
Okay. So you're more or less in the government end of it rather than the educational end of it? Okay. And I'm only speaking from the experiences that I had from a school board and a college board point of view. What happens, we had to instill a thing on both of those called the lowest, most responsible bid. And where that came from was government bids, the lowest bid. Imagine the guys going up in that space capsule, and that's the lowest bidder, what they're thinking. I hope they built this right. Or the Marines that stormed Iwo Jima, which, by the way, today is the 70th anniversary of raising the flag, the Marines raising the flag on Iwo Jima. That their, hoorah, you better believe it, God bless you too, that their weapons work correctly. Well, because shoddy, and when I say shoddy workmanship, behind a wall, it's hard to see that, or a boiler job. But when those start failing after 5 years, and so when I come on this board, all these things are failing, and I said, we can't do this because you're trying to conserve as much money as possible for a school district, which you're talking about, rural, city, any place, because you're producing the future of this world, our children. And as I look at the statistics here, superintendents at the Wright City R2 school district, Warren County R3 school district, make a competitive wage with any other superintendent in the state, in the city, in the county that I live in. And that's right, because you want the most responsible person governing over your school district. And that's what happens when you get away from a competitive bidding situation where someone has prevailing wage to protect and all the work that they're going to do. We also, the most responsible, it was our school district attorney that brought that in, because we would go back and check, like if it's a drywall contractor or a pipe, whoever it is, work behind them, give us references so we can check on your work. They might be the lowest bid, but they weren't the most responsible. And so what happens is a school district, particularly rural, will spend twice as much money to get the job done correctly the second time. And that's what happens. That's why these prevailing wage and all these laws were brought into effect to protect taxpayers and to protect students and the school district. That's why you never want to get in a lawsuit with a school district, because you may win, but you'll spend $4 or $5 million. That takes money away from the education of the children. So my point to you is, from what you've explained to me, and in all due respect, all three of these bills today have not produced any evidence where top quality workmanship is going to be done in any school district, predominantly school districts, or any government entity in a rural area or a county area or city area that's going to save money and get the most and the most positive, most responsible work done, so you don't have to go back and do it twice. And that's my objection to all three of these bills. I mean, it's not personal, this is business, not personal. But, and I don't think anybody's really thinking about that when you get involved in our children's education, and money should go into educating the children, not redoing a project. And how do you go back after a contractor that may be here today, and when it talked about disasters, terrible things that happen. It's notorious that they can come into a community from anything, and that's my objection to your bill, and I present that to you respectfully, but that's my objection. If you'd like to comment on that, thing.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Jim Fall, would you like to testify?
Just briefly on behalf of the Missouri AFL-CIO and the building construction trade, as Representative Weber pointed out, that again is this law, current prevailing wage law, is just 2 years old. Ironically enough, the current prevailing wage law started out as this exact bill, and the legislature found to make the changes apply across the state as currently reflected in the prevailing wage law. As far as local control, this act does not provide for any way for a school district that is opted out to then opt back in, so if they so wish, which it would end prevailing wage completely for a school district with no avenue to return to it if a school board either decided that they had made a decision they weren't happy with, or a new school board was elected to go into. Again, then, for all the reasons previously given for the last two bills, which, as an attorney, I like to incorporate by reference, I would oppose this bill. If there are any questions, if not, I'll be happy to sit down so we can get some lunch.
Thank you, sir. Denise Hasty? Terry Briggs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Terry Briggs, registered lobbyist for the Site Improvement Association in opposition to the bill. We've already gone through everything. I'll keep it short and simple. Most of mine's on the written testimony. If you can answer any questions. I was a little confused as to the statement why the Amish couldn't bid on public school work bill. If they had a company, any company would be allowed to bid on those public school projects. I'm not quite sure I follow that logic, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. Derek Green?
Opposition. You like that one?
Thank you, sir. Raymond Hefner?
I don't think I can outdo Senator Green. Opposition.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McBride, you're going to get your chance after all.
I've already turned my form in, just for the record, with the laborers were opposed.
Thank you, sir. Are there others in opposition?
Honorable Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Bruce Holt with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades representing Kansas City and St. Louis, and my members representing Borders, and we'll testify in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, members